welcome to Push Your Glasses Up, the first Push Your Glasses Up of 2022. Today, I am joined to talk about Hawkeye with one cosplay extraordinaire.
I dabble.
You've probably seen him around here and there on the internet. As Captain Cash, welcome to the show.
Hello, everyone. Pleased to be here. Excited to talk Hawkeye, or as I prefer, Hawk Guy. I really wish they would have done that joke. I'm sad that they didn't, but what are you going to do?
Yeah. I will say, like, people can see that you have that mug and that shirt.
Oh, yes.
You will not be able to see this as we discuss, but I have layout things set up to say, I think you're the right person to have on to talk about this, because you did, like you are in it right now, you have done full, this era of
the Matt Fraction
comic
Hawkeye.
accurate Hawkeye, which is right there on the viewers' screens. You've also, for stuff that happened towards the end of the season, you have done a lot of Matt Murdock and Daredevil stuff.
Super pumped about that.
Which is actually, that is how we first met, is we were at that terrible upstairs bar.
Terrible?
No, the bar. The bar was
terrible.
terrible.
What was it, Jolt something? Jolt
Whatever
and Joe's.
it was the place that had carpeting. that's my differential.
What, you know, like a carpeted bar?
I don't go to bars at all anymore, like at all. But it's weird. It's a weird vibe when there's carpet in a bar.
But I feel
it was
like
the Geek and Sundry party,
nerds,
though, so it was
there
fun.
we go.
It was
Yeah,
still fun. And you were wearing that Matt Murdock costume, the beat up in a suit costume.
I refuse to be in San Diego during Comic-Con and not be in some kind of costume.
Yeah.
It's just a rule. It feels awkward otherwise.
Well, we were both ordering something, and you happened to, like, you walked up while I was ordering something, and I was like, dude, fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. You handed me a business card that was in character, and it was terrific. So
my favorite part about that business card is if you actually kind of look at the card itself, and I can find an example to show people, but I think, the street address I had listed was the actual Marvel Comics headquarters. The phone number I had listed was like 555 avocados.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
You had the Devil in the Detail slogan on there.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah. You gotta commit. It's the little stuff, everybody.
But yeah, so I think you're the right person to jump into this show with. So what did you think, just top level, before we kind of like dig into it? Top level, what did you think of this show?
Top level, I liked it a lot. I don't think that it was perfect. I feel like there were things that were either rushed or not expanded upon enough, and at the same time, maybe you could have excised them entirely, and that would have been fine. So that, but it was so much fun, and I loved the Christmas time setting. I wound up liking Renner, which I was, not to be a jerk about it, a little surprised. All of his previous outings as Hawkeye, I was kind of like,
not really his fault. That's the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, when he actually had a chance to do some, like, he had one big moment of acting, which was the, like, you go get your hammer, and that was it in, 6 movies?
Well, in Age of Ultron, I will say he did have the standout moment with Elizabeth Olsen, where he says, like,
you walk out the door,
you're an Avenger. Like, that is,
okay.
That's what we should have gotten more of up before this show, but we finally get it here. Yeah.
But the thing I think that translates well, at least from the comics, is there's kind of a sense of nobody likes Clint.
Yeah.
And that kind of works through here, which I like.
It works in the meta real well with the MCU.
Exactly.
And yeah, that is sort of a bummer, because it is over 10 years of this. Well, I guess now about 10 years with this character.
Yeah. Exactly.
So I do, like, I think I'm even, like, a little more hot on this show than you are. I loved the stuff that I've loved the most in these Disney Plus shows this year has been the weird stuff, like the Loki, the Scarlet Witch stuff that goes, like, existential, but, like, even in a visual way. So for them to do something that is more of a grounded and realistic kind of look at things, you know, as realistic as the MCU
as it goes, as a
gets.
giant arrow can be.
Yeah. It did a better job as a whole than Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I loved that show for what it was, but yeah, it had some dips and it had, you know, whatever. But I think the key thing here is it closed out the show on a really good episode, which a lot of these shows have had a hard time doing.
Yes, very much so.
This finale was great. I do think the Bert and Birdie team up was a little bit better for directors than what we got for the finale, but the finale, it didn't dip as hard as it could have, which is great.
Yeah.
It didn't just turn into like the end of WandaVision when it's just punchy
CGI
in
fire in the sky.
Yeah. This actually had clever stuff going on with like the trick arrows being a thread through the whole season was just fantastic. And
I love that we actually got some for real trick arrows, because most of the time in the Avengers, Hawkeye is just shooting arrows, and then every so often the arrow is a grappling hook or the arrow is actually a gun somehow. But this was like, it's a putty arrow, it's a giant size arrow, it's an arrow that shoots gas, it's an arrow that, and like, okay, this is Hawkeye, good.
Yeah, that's the comic stuff that we have been missing.
Yeah, and like I've heard it said, I'm sure people have seen the tweet where it's like, Marvel makes two kinds of movies, cosmic movies and hat movies.
Yeah.
And like, this is a hat movie, or a hat show, I guess, right? It's grounded, but it's some of the best grounded stuff that they have done while still maintaining kind of a fun, like, it never goes as dark as Winter Soldier. It never delves as deeply into like serious subject matter as Falcon and Winter Soldier tried. But there's I appreciate the ambition of Falcon and the Winter Soldier for what they were trying to tackle, but I just don't feel like they tackled it necessarily as gracefully or as completely as that kind of subject matter requires, because it's about a man in a bird costume, a kick-ass bird costume that I would love to make, but it's a man in a bird costume at the end of the day.
Right.
Where this, it's a dude who shoots arrows, so it's a lot more lighthearted. It's at Christmas time. There's a dog, you know.
Yeah, and that's the thing is, with the Christmas time setting, as much as people like to harp on Iron Man 3, I am an Iron Man 3 defender. I think it is a very, very solid movie with like really cool vibes through the whole thing.
Agreed. I mean, it's better than 2 for sure, in my opinion.
Oh yeah. But I think this pairs really well with it. Not just because of the Christmas setting, that is certainly helpful in it.
Bonus.
But I think it has that balance of like, there is a little bit of the heavier stuff with dealing with the aftermath of Natasha's death and all of that. But like, it's still got that sort of energy, that sort of like little bit of something extra that's just kind of like, it's just fun. It's just a fun show.
Yeah. Boy, that Rogers musical though.
That I absolutely love that became the post-credit scene on the finale, and I love that people are mad about it.
I like, it's one of those things where like it's cringy, and that's the point. It's supposed to be, and it like, but it's so good at being cringy. I get like that secondhand like embarrassment, and I'm just like,
and they did.
Oh, this is hard to watch.
That's the thing, is they captured like the perfect combination of Hamilton and Spider-Man Turn Off the Dark and just smashed it together, and it worked really well if you know.
Yes.
And I think that's sort of the problem, that I think the people that aren't along for the ride with that joke is you're gonna
leave some people out in the cold no matter what you do. Like, that's a very specific. Do you enjoy musical theater, especially sometime in the last decade? Boy, have we got a very uncomfortable joke.
Yeah, so I do think that some of the stuff in this show misses for people because they maybe just don't understand the references, or not even understand the references, just can't go along with them.
If you don't like musicals, you're not gonna like the joke about the extended joke about the musical that is the musical.
Yeah, and I think it is the same people who got mad at the Captain America gag at the end of Far From Home. Like, so I think it's the people who put too much expectation on learning about the future with a tease, and it's like those are good, but like sometimes they're just fun. They don't have
Sometimes
to
you're
be
just eating shawarma. That's okay.
Well, that's the thing is like after Hawkeye being like this thing that while it dives into some of those deeper things, like it is just a fun show. You're not gonna close out on some like grand scheme thing. Like that's not the show, so it wouldn't make sense to doing it. Like I could see a tease with who they brought in, yes, but like but whatever. But like we can start to move into those those finer
spoilery
details
things
now. Yeah.
Should we have set up top? We're spoiling the hell out of this, I suppose.
Yeah, that's sort of how this show goes. We do a few minutes up top, and then.
So if you haven't watched the show, I think we all agree, watch the show. Yeah. Now, if you haven't, get out of here and come back.
Exactly. Yeah. So do you want to go episode by episode or and talk about a few things here and there? Or do you want to just talk about in general, like the coolest stuff that you?
I think it would help me to go episode by episode, sure. But at the same time, I don't know that I've prepared that.
I got it. I got you.
So you might have to like
I'm a host.
Guide me through.
I do this.
Okay.
So the first episode, Never Meet Your Heroes. That's the one where they do not meet until the end. But that is Clinton, New York, with his kids. Which I love some of the stuff that happens with that, like when they're sitting at dinner and his one son is just being fucking weird, just making faces at the table, and Clint's like, "You look like a maniac. What are you doing?"
No, that's maybe one of the most true dad moments.
It felt extremely
no
real.
idea what you're about, but all right. I mean, listen, you're not making that much of a scene. You're being quiet. We're cool.
Yeah, and it felt like that was honestly just them goofing around, and they just happened to capture it, which was
just leave it in. It's good.
Fantastic. This is where we get Kate being expelled from school after her bell incident, which was very, very fun introduction to the character.
The best possible introduction. She opens the bag and you see all of her trick arrows. I'm like,
that thread begins right there, and it's exactly, it's so wonderful.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like
we get the auction, right?
Yeah, this episode then just turns to the black market auction and like real in-depth stuff with characters that we end up not caring about because they also die really quickly. You get Jack and his uncle, and Jack, fantastic through this whole show. And I'm glad
the dark horse character.
Yeah, I'm so glad that like early on I was like, this seems like a red herring, and it was.
I mean, listen, that knowing who Jack Duquesne is, he's the swordsman, right? So as someone who's read the comics, I'm like, well, I mean, swordsman's not always a good guy, and a lot of the time
he's the worst Avenger.
He's morally ambiguous at best. So, and no one knows who he is. So it's one of those things where they might just turn him into anything. But the show goes so far out of its way to be like, this is the bad guy, that you're like, is it though? Is it though?
Yeah, and so like I get that it might be a little too far for some people, but like I like that he wound up just being like a goofy guy that was trying to be a good like father figure to Kate. Like it was a really nice thing to see a character do that, even though like it's a character that has done different things and has a history with Hawkeye, but like I appreciate that they rewrote it in this way to like at least try to keep people on their toes a little bit, rather than setting it up as like, no, he's the swordsman and then he was the swordsman. Like it would just be a little too straightforward at that point, because the show is so ground level that it like there needs to be like a fun little twist with that. And I'm glad they did it with a character like that, because nobody cares about the swordsman.
No, I will say Tony Dalton's performance though is also it's pitch perfect, where it's just like is he just awkward, or is he hiding something, or is he just weird? And if you think about it, he is a grown man who is so good at fencing, he can offhandedly flick and knock a sword out of your hand. Yeah, he's probably a little weird.
Yeah.
And like,
He's a sword guy.
Yeah, he's a big sword guy.
Yeah.
Being as someone who owns at least one sword, we're a little weird. That's okay. That's okay. I loved it, and as someone who cosplays, it is my great sadness that I do not think there is any way I can legitimately cosplay that and have anybody get it outside of like a handful of Hawkeye fans.
He's wearing a suit.
It's like, yeah, it's a suit with a sweet mustache and then a sword that you would have, and I'm like, that's just not going to translate. If you did that character was fun.
You could do it with a specific sword, which would help a little bit, but it's the only differential would be like you have like one little spat of blood for the finale episode.
Exactly.
That might be it. But yeah, it's where we get that auction, which is actually a great Kate scene where she's pretending to be a server at this auction.
Yeah, some spy stuff.
And I forget the name of the guy that she says is the one that like hired her and brought her in, but like then a guy with that name shows up and says, "I'm him." Like,
yeah, what did you do? Yeah,
that was
I will say,
nice joke.
Complaints on this episode was where they made the sword like a lightsaber, in that it just
the retraction
extends from the hilt. I'm like, what?
It doesn't make sense because the hilt is too short for that. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, like, I'm willing to hand wave you. I'm like, oh, it's Star Tech
Nano stuff, but like,
I don't know.
Yeah.
But like, what does that add to the weapon? Nothing. It just like doesn't seem cooler to me. It just seems gimmicky.
Yeah.
In a show with trick arrows.
Yeah. It's just a toy they can sell. That's all. Like,
now I kind of want to see if they can pull that off. Anyway.
Yeah. You'll have to do extensive research like Disney did for that real life lightsaber that only 6 people will see at that that new hotel.
I'm one of those 6. I'm going to that hotel.
Oh, you didn't cancel your reservations like everybody else?
Not yet. Not yet.
A lot of people have.
Hanging on. I'm going in April, and I'm like, come on.
Actually, show something. Well, it's not even that. I think people are canceling because the stuff they have decided to show has been not as cool as they first said it was gonna be.
Oh, bummer. Well,
yeah.
Either way, I'm gonna get drunk at a Star Wars bar.
Hey, all more power to you. Oga's canteen is very cool. The vibe in there is awesome, and DJ Rex. I love having Pee Wee Herman voices in my parks. It's great. But yeah, so we get that stuff, but this is where we also get the first look at the Tracksuit Mafia, which done so well in this series. Made even more of a joke than the comic did.
Yes.
And I appreciate that they are just there to be foils. Like,
I do think I will say that's the only negative I have with them, is that they're never actually threatening in the same way that the Tracksuit Mafia from the comics are. Like they actually.
There should have been they had a big guy that sort of seemed like the leader of the suits before, going up the ladder. So they should have had a muscle character that is the intimidating guy, and they never did. Like, it's fine for me, but like, yeah, I totally understand why it would be, you've
got a lot of characters to get through.
And but it does seem like they lack not even just like the ineptitude, but like intimidation factor of like, at least if they had that one main guy that's like taller than the rest of them, if he was actually a little intimidating, that would be fine. But I like that they were just doofuses.
Spectacularly so.
Yeah. But like, for the most part, that's this episode. This first episode was just setting up like stuff that isn't really that significant until the very end of the series. Like with Jack's uncle being killed, and the watch, which really is not even a substantial portion of the show. It's just a really fun Easter egg that pays off at the end. But
Yeah, like that's such a deep cut for how deeply they went after it. When it was revealed what it is, I'm like, oh,
and the way
so
they
that's
did
what it
it,
was.
the way they did it
All right,
isn't
okay.
even like an obvious thing. Like it is a thing.
Yeah.
You need to know a secondary code name for a character that has a code
Yes.
name. Like, so yeah,
Exactly. And that character's relationship to Hawkeye, and it's like,
yeah.
Anyway,
and we'll get more, I guess, detail into that as we get to like the later episodes. And the thing that I kind of would like to see them do with ties to that original character that I think they could do.
Okay.
But the next episode is Hide and Seek, which this first 3 episodes I do think went like good, even better, even better. So this is sort of like one of the very good episodes without being like one of the best episodes. But this is Hide and Seek, where the tracked suits find Kate's apartment. This is where we get the scene from the trailer with the Molotov cocktail coming. Like Clint cracks the window, catches it, throws it back, which is
that is great.
Cool.
That's a legit like, oh wow, no, there's a reason this guy's on the Avengers.
Yeah. And then like that's just a cool little scene. But like this is where you actually get set up that like means something throughout the show. They leave the tracksuit behind. And it turns out that it was taken from the scene by a firefighter who is also a LARPer. And I love it so much. And I love that they set it up as like, this is Grills. This is the version of a guy from that. Like, that's how hard that they like. It's clearly its own thing, but like the level of inspiration they took from that comic.
Even to the
fantastic.
Like the credits are like the comic come to life, and I think
which has its own controversy around it. Unfortunately,
which kind of rightfully so, in my opinion, that they weren't crediting David. It's Aha, correct?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, I think before hearing it out loud, I used to say Aha, but I think it's Aha. Yeah.
But so the whole comic. This whole series is very heavily based on, it was 2012, I think, or 14. I can't remember.
I don't think it was 14. I think because it ended in 15.
Okay, so
I believe
maybe 13, 12, somewhere in there.
They had that really long break between issue like 23 and 24 or something.
Okay,
and
yeah.
That last issue is just,
Yeah, but it's the Fraction, David Aha, Hawkeye, My Life is a Weapon. And, like, it's so incredibly good. It's so fantastic. And it's clear that they took the visual cues. And Grills is one of the characters from that is not at all like this character, but it's such a minor thing that I'm like, hey, look, I appreciate that you at least mention it.
Yeah, the LARPers are the replacement for the tenants in the building. Which is, like, anyone that was a tenant in the building is a LARPer.
Got a LARPer, yeah.
Yeah.
I did love...
You know, we get the reference with the one who has like the bag with like that her wife wrote the nickname on. But yeah, I did
like that they were never the butt of the joke necessarily. Like it was silly, but they're always kind of like,
it wasn't looking down on them. It was like, you fucking nerds, get out of here. Like, so
I loved how permissive Hawkeye was with him. Like, all right, fine, I'll play your game. I need the suit back, please.
Yeah, he's not an asshole. He's just like over it.
Tired. He wants to go home.
He's just a grumpy guy. That's all.
Yeah.
But he never like takes it out on them. He's just like,
yeah,
I know you love this, but can we get through it?
Please.
But yeah, so that's we get that fantastic fight scene that's played as if it's a real fight. I love how serious
sound effects guy. King.
Yeah. I really love how seriously they did slow-mo for it. Like it's done so well. But we also get Eleanor not believing, or Kate brings up that Jack may have some bad ties to him. And Eleanor doesn't believe her. And doesn't believe that he would murder his own uncle.
Spoilers, he doesn't.
Yeah. Uncle Side. Doesn't actually happen in this movie or this show. But this is where we get that fencing scene that you mentioned earlier, which is a really cool, like, it ratchets up a little bit of tension without going overboard. And it's just
I love. It's like, oh, maybe this guy's actually dangerous. He's not just some sort of like idiot rich guy.
Yeah, he's that too, but
he's still that.
He's still a like trained actual swordsman, and he like I like the way that they wrote him to be modest about it, so it does make you think that like, okay, maybe he is hiding something, but it turns out he's just modest about it.
Yeah,
because he's just a goofy, cool guy.
Listen, I'm dating this lady. We're probably going to get married. She has an adult daughter who I know is a very good fencer. She's very athletic. She's an excellent archer. She's got all those awards. We're gonna fence, and it's gonna be fun. And it's gonna be a way for us to bond.
And he encourages her by like, granted, patronizing her at the same time, but like. Yeah. Does it in a way where he's just trying to be the nice guy that dates your mom.
Yes, exactly. And at the end, he's like, "Don't fuck with me now." Oh, am I allowed to cuss on this?
You have ignored the fact that I have sworn multiple times already.
Okay, great. so I can cuss then. Great.
Yes.
So it's like, I'm nice, but I can still probably kick your ass at this.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it manages to balance the things out, so it does keep you guessing a little bit. I still saw through the red herring early, but like, that's just because I can see the formula being written outside of the show a little bit. Has nothing to do with how it's actually written in the show. It's me like actually like
knowing what
storytelling.
You know beyond.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll be honest, I was a little surprised that he wasn't at least a little involved in it. Like I did, like, again, I'm jumping way ahead to sit and do spoilers on.
But like
Eleanor's the bad guy.
Yeah, a little less of a patsy.
Yeah,
and like
I figured he was in on it. Yeah, but he wasn't the leader. That was Eleanor.
Right.
But I was pleasantly surprised, and we'll talk about it at the end with how it shakes out with him.
Yeah. Also, I need to point out, I skipped over that Lucky is in the first episode, and
okay, yeah, Lucky the pizza dog
didn't get enough
the most important character in the show. Like, I get why it's hard to work with animals, and if you don't have the budget to CGI a whole ass dog, like this is Into the Wild or whatever.
Well, also to CG the eye for every shot.
Yes, exactly.
Because it is a dog with two eyes that they CG.
One eye out.
Yeah. But then back to this episode is after that little duel, Clint allows the tracksuits to take him, which the way that he does it, I love. He is just standing at a corner and like lets them beat him up. But then they put a bag over his head, and he just goes, "Guys, I can see through the bag." Like he's still
just criticizing their ability to be mafia at all.
Like, it takes the piss out of the tracksuit mafia like every chance it gets, and I love that they do that, because like, granted, again, we don't get like the one intimidating guy so much, but like they're a joke, and like everyone knows it. Clint knows it. The viewers know it. Like, just keep going with it, because they're clearly they're not good people, so you can do that. You don't like, you're not shitting on a character that's like trying to do good the whole time. So we then get a little bit of back and forth with the tracksuit and Kate and Clint, but this is where we get our first introduction to Echo.
Right.
In probably the most daredevil-y set up shot of this whole series.
Red. It's so red. I was like, I saw that, I'm like,
it's so saturated, and also just like the set design of like all the speakers, and then she's just standing there and simply turns around. Like, this show is shot more like an MCU thing, but that specific shot was more like, even specifically like season 1 of Daredevil, where it's like, it's really intense, and it really is trying to like hammer home visually what they're trying to do differently, which is super cool. But that's also that's that whole episode.
Well, so and brief pause to talk a little bit about Echo, because I think that's an interesting character, and I think in the comics right now, doesn't she host the Phoenix Force? I'm pretty sure she does.
I am not entirely caught up with stuff in the comics right now. I do believe when I was doing research on the character that Phoenix related stuff came up. I don't remember exactly what. I did read the only books I read last year in 2021 was almost the entirety of all of the X-Men books last year. I didn't read any. When I say, I mean like the current run stuff. I don't mean since like 62.
Okay. Like, gee, I mean, I'm impressed.
I just
some
mean
of that
like
stuff is dense.
Yeah, I just mean like Powers of X, all like those the Hickman stuff.
Love those. Yeah.
Because they do bundle them, so you can get a volume. Like volume 1 is like the first issue of 5 books, and then volume 2 is the next issue. So they actually did that the right way. But it's as far as I got in that never got to that stuff. So I don't know if it even does in the X-Men books or if it's kept separate. So
I guess my whole thing was I don't feel like they did a great job explaining Echo's powers, or that she has powers at all. I mean, like, if you were to watch this show with no understanding of who Echo was, I don't think you would clock at all that she's anything other than a good martial artist. But in the comics, the idea is that she's like Daredevil, but instead of being blind, she's deaf, right? Where her other senses are so heightened that why she's standing in that room with the speakers is she can't hear it, but she can feel it.
Yeah.
It's sort of similar to how Daredevil has a radar sense. Her sense of touch is so heightened. She can't really hear, but whatever you would call that, echolocate, not really, by touch.
Yeah. I think the way that it's set up in the show is more that, because like, and we'll go into the next episode with it right here, because it does the flashback stuff, and the way it's portrayed.
We get that Vinny D hand. I'm like, Vinny D, I know that's you.
We get the sort of portrayal of it being more of like training, and just like intensive lifelong training of honing her skills so that this doesn't have to be a roadblock for her. And so she uses it more as having this allows her to focus on the other abilities, as opposed to like gaining a special ability the way that Daredevil does. So yeah.
I did like that we got what I think his name is Zan McClarnon as her dad. That dude's great in basically everything. I loved him in Dr. Sleep.
Character actor extraordinaire. Yeah,
exactly. Pro Daddy, I think his character's name was. Either way,
but yeah, that's where we get her father's death. We get her training. We get the tease of what is revealed later to be Kingpin. I love that the room that they're in is an old KB Toys.
Yes.
Because not only is it just like what I grew up with, but like it's also the direct ties of Marvel to KB Toys that I don't know if many people know about, is the fact that like Toy Biz like owned KB Toys, and when they made a partnership with Marvel, they actually like gave Marvel 42% of the company, and then that's where Avi Arad came into it.
Avi, the first true believer. If you've seen the new Spider-Man film, I saw that and I was like,
I think that was directly from Kevin Feige, because he is one of the first. Avi Arad and Laura Schuler Donner were the first two people to give Kevin Feige a shot, and so I think when we see X-Men, we're going to see the same thing in the credits for an X-Men movie. For Lauren Schuler.
I mean, that's fine. I don't have to like it, but fine.
Yeah, I just think it's Kevin Feige being a nice guy to the guy that helped him.
Fair enough. I'm not trying to.
I do get it, because we do associate Avi Arad with like the Spider-Man movies specifically, and like the blame for a lot of the bad stuff that happened in those movies.
Yeah.
But also, like, he was executive producer on X-Men the Animated Series and all the 90s cartoons, and like, so I need to give him some slack on the stuff that he did wrong, because he did a lot right that I think he didn't get credit for.
Nobody's 100% one thing or the other. There are shades of gray in people, and Avi Arad definitely did some good things. All right, fine. Either way, I also like
hidden behind the creativity of other people. I will say, yes. He doesn't get full credit on all those things.
Yeah. Well, listen, if we're gonna talk about that, we probably need to have a conversation about somebody else with Marvel.
There's a lot of that. Yes, it's Marvel.
Yeah.
Like,
but I'm pretty sure I have some Katie toys in the mess over here. So
yeah, I have. I don't know where it is actually. I used it as a prop in my Amazing Spider-Man video that I did, where I have a Spider-Man the Animated Series figure that has the 6 arms. And when you pinch his legs together, they spin. They go like that.
Spectacular.
Yes. But back to so we ended off with the whole
baby toy fight.
Yeah, and this is a super cool episode because it does do a good job of doing some of the like cool setup with Maya Echo, and like giving her backstory and stuff. But then we get just a fun action episode after that.
Oh yeah, like this is the car chase episode.
Well, it's the car chase episode, but it's also like the fight scene before the car chase is super fun.
Oh yeah,
too.
even that,
like the ball, like crawling in the ball pit, stabbing them in the shoes. Like, I love
the no look shot, and it like pins the Tracksuit Mafia's hand to the wall. I'm like, oh, that's right, he's an Avenger. He can no look do that stuff.
And that's him without his hearing aid, because this is the episode where like his hearing comes into play a lot more than the first 2 episodes. Granted, like in the first episode, it might be the second episode, you do see a little bit of like his kid signing some simple sign language to him, and you can see like how nice of a moment that is for Clint. So there's a little bit of a setup, but it doesn't, like, it comes really into effect in this episode, to the point where Maya says like it's holding you back, and she smashes it once it gets knocked out of his ear. And this is, I think it just does a really good overall job of balancing these things out, of like super fun action sequences, character development for a character we don't necessarily know that well, and then character development for a character we do actually know pretty well, and then Kate is just very funny through the whole thing. Like, like
her constant exasperation about what am I supposed to do? Like, I want to do this, but oh no.
Yeah, she's trying to do student teacher.
Yes,
but the teacher doesn't want to be involved. It's like I really like, I love the juxtaposition of that side, because almost all the time with like a superhero show or comic or whatever, like the mentor is a reluctant mentor who doesn't want to be there, but not so far to the point where he's like, I just want to fucking leave. Like, he doesn't want to be involved in this at all. I'm
just trying to get back for Christmas, guys. That's really all I'm doing here.
The classic trope of a good Christmas movie is,
gotta get home for Christmas. That's like 90%.
Get home for Christmas. I left my kid at home, so I have to go home for Christmas.
Terrorists are storming the building, and I have to act as one-man army.
And I have to get my wife out so we can go home for Christmas.
Because our kids are at home, not necessarily alone, but kind of for Christmas.
And watching it on the news. They know their mom's office building has been taken over by terrorists. But yeah, so I just think this is, honestly, and I'll kind of skip ahead in my notes, like, I think this is my favorite episode.
Yeah, this was Journey into Mystery on Loki for me. This is where I was like, oh my god, they get it. This is super fun. This is great. I like this a lot. And like, we got the Pym arrow, we got the sticky arrow. Like, this is where it all starts to like,
all the things that you want from the show.
Yes,
is in this episode. And that, it's so good. And that's, why like a lot of people loved episode 4 when it when I saw reactions to it. And I kind of didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I thought it was good.
Yeah.
But like it was a lot. It's not a filler episode, but it's a lot more just like exposition episode. Which coming off of the last episode where it balanced a lot of those things, Partners, Am I Right is a perfectly fine episode. But that like, this is where the last episode ends with them in Kate's mom's apartment, and it has the cliffhanger of like the Ronin sword to Clint's neck, which was like huge. That seemed like it was going to be a huge deal, and then it just didn't.
Which again, I love because
I like the
plays
twist
into I thought someone was breaking into my house. You're Hawkeye the Avenger who saved the world on multiple occasions. No.
You're Archer.
Oh, that's right.
The Archer. Yeah. That's like, and that's the buffoonery of Jack is just so good in the show.
Tony Dalton, you goddamn genius.
But yeah, so this is where we get them, Kate and Clint sitting down with Jack and Eleanor.
Yeah.
It's a good scene. I won't take it away from that, but then like we get the moment where Eleanor says, "Keep Kate out of it." Again.
Yeah.
That is like the best part of this whole scene, really. Like,
agreed.
It gives it weight, it gives it a meaning, and it
feels real,
and it pays off with like when they kind of have a separation a little bit later in the show. But this is also kind of where it gets a little too set up, like with other stuff. This is where the Jack is CEO of Sloan. This is where Kate figures out that Clint is Ronin, but doesn't tell him to his face. This is the diner episode. This is where she calls Lucky the pizza dog for the first time.
Yeah. I mean, you had the big action of the last episode, and now you've got a lot more like, okay, let's reset. How are we going to end this thing? And this ultimately ends with the introduction of Yelena, correct?
Yes, which is that is a great scene. I do love that.
It's a great fight scene, and
it doesn't have a ton of
but like it's a lot of work to get to that place, and this is where I talk about where I don't think the series is perfect. And I did mention it before when we were talking about Hawkeye's hearing. Like that's one of those threads where it doesn't feel quite developed enough. Like I get there's a lot of themes, and that the idea that one of the main antagonists of the show is also deaf, that Hawkeye's deaf, that's a cool thread. But like then there's the Ronin thread, and then there's this stuff. Like it feels like this particular episode, they're adding additional things because everything in this has to mean something, and everything has to pay off. And ultimately it does. It does ultimately, like everything has some kind of resolution. There's not a lot of hanging questions I have after watching this. Like, oh, what happened to the thing? Oh, well, I guess we'll learn in a later episode. None of that's there.
Yeah.
But they're also taking a lot of time to set up stuff where it's like, it feels like there's either too much going on here or not. Like, you either needed 2 fewer episodes or 2 more episodes, and I don't know if either of those is the right answer.
Right. And like this episode also had like there's stuff in here with like the scene where Kotze goes to his car and Clint is in the back seat.
Yeah. Oh, then that's a whole other thing.
Yeah, it's a good scene, but I don't think it needs to be there. Like it didn't really add much to me. It was Clint saying like, "Hey, quit it."
Yeah,
and then
the whole Kazi
there was the funny joke of him throwing the gun away, and like that was.
I mean, that was funny.
Yeah,
but like the whole. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
I was just like the whole Kazi subplot is another one of those where it's like the reason that you're here is because we can't actually have Kingpin in so quickly, so we have to create some sort of proxy, and it's like. And is there a relationship with Kazi and Maya?
to me, they played kind of like cousins. Um,
Uh,
and so it was one of those things where, like, we get to this later where he says, like, it was never supposed to be you, it was supposed to be me.
right.
And that sort of has that, like, little bit of family aggression to it to me.
I guess, yeah.
But, like, that character is there to eventually just sow deceit. You can do that at any time. You don't have to force it into this kind of episode that already has a bunch of setup for other stuff. So it's like this episode setting up like 6 different things. It's almost like they are giving the expectation that they're not going to be able to follow through on them. I think they did follow through on literally everything they set up in this episode.
Yeah, agreed.
But it's a shotgun blast of stuff that they set up. So like not all of it pays off in a super cool way. So like why bother squeezing all of that in there when you can just do like two or three things and go from there? Because this is
where Kate sneaks into the apartment and finds out that somehow Maya has clocked Hawkeye's whole family, which I don't know how that's possible, and the show doesn't explain it. And
they don't really explain it, but I think it's just a matter of the correlation of characters. Like, I think they play it so that we're just supposed to know that she knows he is also involved with Ronan somehow, and if she has to use Hawkeye, she'll use his family against them to find Ronan and whatever. So I think it's just one of those things where it's like a loose setup where they don't dive into it tremendously well. And then like this is where we do get the watch back, which is like or not get it back, but like this is where we find it again. Which is, you know, cool. This is a thread that continued on. That could have also been anywhere though. Like there's just so much stuffed into this episode that it's just like none of it means as much as it should.
I had money that was in Pizza Dog's belly, and because they kept making references, oh, we gotta walk that dog, I figured they'd walk the dog and the dog would poop it out. And I mean that's semi funny anyway, but I figured that's
cliche,
where the setup was going.
But it's I wouldn't be surprised if, because it's Marvel and they do like 9 different versions of stuff
that exists somewhere, you reckon?
Even if it's for trailers, but like I wouldn't be surprised if that was written in there somewhere to just have in there, and then they took it out and just either replace it with something else or just
poop joke. This is Christmas. Come on.
Never happens at Christmas. Dogs are constipated through the holidays.
That's how it is.
Yeah,
Santa's gift to everyone.
So yeah, unfortunately, I think this episode is my least favorite, even though I think a lot of people ended up loving this episode.
Well, I mean, we've talked around it a lot, but this is the Yelena episode. Well, not the Yelena episode, but this is the introduction of Yelena, where she's here, it's her, and the fight scene is legitimately good.
And the references in the fight scene are very good. Like the mirrors of like Clint over the edge of the building, like trying to grab Kate, like all the Natasha thing again is all the Endgame stuff, and this is where we do get a little bit more of that to start playing into the show. It's just like cool, but it's lost amongst other stuff.
It does put in the seeds of kind of the echo. Well, I didn't mean to do that, but here we go. The echo of Hawkeye and Black Widow in the new Hawkeye.
You also did that earlier. You ended up saying echolocation, and I don't think you realized that was
echolocate. Yeah, I mean, she doesn't do that, but anyway. But no, that Hawkeye mentions that the most important shot was the shot he didn't take, which would have been to kill Nat. And in the same way, Kate doesn't shoot Yelena on the rooftop, even though she has the opportunity to. And this, I feel like, plants the seeds for their friendship, which is in the next episode, and I think is the best, like, we're just gonna talk for 5 minutes scene in almost any Marvel thing I've seen.
The 2-person holiday party.
Yeah, it's just it's spectacular. Like, there's this combination of it's kind of funny, but Yelena is still actually very threatening.
Oh, you mean the mac and cheese episode?
Yes, I mean the mac and cheese. That's
sorry.
fine.
Sorry, the 2-person holiday party I think is this one. like
Okay.
the episode we were just talking about, which is
Right,
that
where
is
they go
good.
back and they get drunk on daiquiris and shit.
Exactly, yeah. Like that is a good sequence. I think that sequence and the rooftop fight are the standouts of that episode, and if they could just be standalone from the episode, I would love this episode a lot more. But yeah, the next one is
go again, where like the two person holiday party where they're getting drunk and they're learning how to like flick a bottle cap by snapping your fingers. It comes back later,
and it's a good character moment. Like it's a simple, good character moment. That's all that this show needs. It doesn't need like 7 different plots like weaving out all over the place. So
I do love that Hawkeye Clint is forceful enough to do it, to turn off a television, because I can do that. That's some crap I learned in college, like every other frat boy. But
bottle caps, man,
to actually use it as a weapon, I'm like, oh wow, okay, there's a lot more going on with this guy.
Yeah. And that's so the next episode is called Ronin, and this is where we see in the previous episode the breakup, if you will, of Kate wanting to work as a partner with Clint, but Clint saying, I'm not your partner, that we are done here. I think that is the one good payoff of earlier in the episode when Eleanor says, keep Kate out of it, and he says, like, I can't keep her out of it, but I can make sure she's safe.
Right.
I think this is the only like solid payoff from that conversation. But really, probably a top MCU TV moment, top MCU moment all around is how this episode begins. And it is Yelena's point of view on the blip. And it is so fantastic. First, it's just starts with her and another widow trying to free another widow from mind control. She was not mind controlled.
I love that. Like, you ruined my carpet.
Yeah, it was. If this show has like one fault, it may be like flipping expectation maybe too many times, but like it still plays well, which you know, as long as it plays well, that's fine.
I'm cool with it.
But the way that they do the almost instantaneous gone and back of when she's in the bathroom,
I love that,
is so good. And like most of the CG budget, I feel like went into this episode for that scene alone.
It was dog eyes and a snap. That's it.
That's it. But yeah, it's I think it is the coolest way we have seen this portrayed. Like, it is very emotional when like Peter starts to fade away in Infinity War. When the rest of them also fade away, but like Peter had the lingering moment, which is, you know, the far more emotional thing. But this is just a very cool, like, what's going on kind of moment for a character.
Yes.
And just the way that they play how she comes back. Like we saw in WandaVision what it's like when a mass of people come back with the hospital scene. But like here, it's just one person confused and suddenly in a different place, quote unquote, even though it's the same place, and like walking out the door and seeing one of the same people that she was with before.
Now 5 years older with a child and everything else, and it's just like,
and how she does not know about Natasha. Like, it hits. Like, everything about this scene just hits so well. And then then there's a little bit of like jumps with like weird ways to start out the rest of the episode, which is like, this is where Kate is like now kind of, even before the macaroni and cheese scene, like kind of buddying up with Kate with like text messaging. Which is a little bit of a weird jump already, but you know, it's fine because it does lead to like the macaroni and cheese scene, which is absolutely stellar. Like,
great.
This episode coming off the last episode, like, turned everything back around 100%. Like, everything about this episode is so good. Yeah,
And
the
Florence Pugh
Macaroon,
is just like the
she
balance
crushes
that
that
she is
character.
able to strike between like being fun and likable, but also she is here to kill the main character
Yeah,
or one of the main characters. And she's not mean about it, but you know, if she has to be, she can.
yeah, and it's kind of wild, like the displacement of how these things came out because everything is out of order
Oh,
how it was
sure.
supposed to come out before the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I think that's all pretty much because of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier because it had bioweapons in it, so
As a plot,
they
yeah.
had to change stuff in that, which then made them have to change stuff later on and shift it in front of it.
Mhm.
And yeah, so but the way that they bounce off one another is
Right. The
so
chemistry.
yeah, it is. They are both just like quick talking, but one of them is a goober and one of them is the foil. So it's like
Yes.
it does the classic straight man and like comedic character thing, but just like
Right.
ratchets it up a ton, like compared to it's not the Odd Couple, but like it kind of is, and but
Yeah.
like in a
Like, I
in a
mean,
more cartoony way.
yeah, they're different enough that you're like, how could they be friends? But at the same time, they would make great friends, and they have such chemistry. I just
Yeah,
like,
it is. They're like the epitome of what you think of with like frenemy. Like it
yes,
is. They are perfect foils for one another. Because Kate's just exacerbated the whole time, and Yelena is just like all in the whole time. It's
yeah.
fantastic.
I am silly Russian girl. Things can go however at once. Some of those ways is me killing you.
Yeah, yeah. The that her tone switches are just like
Yes.
so well done. But this is where so they Kate and Clint have parted ways for the
Mhm.
time being. It is a little bit of like a forced thing, but I appreciate that. Like
I mean, you kind of have to have them
you
come
have to have
apart
them come
before you
back
can get them
together.
to come
Yeah.
together. Yeah, exactly.
Um.
Which is fine. We get this is where Clint goes in the Ronin suit to confront Maya and be like, "Look, I was Ronin. You can make a thing out of it. I'm sorry. I was in a weird place. Sorry I killed your dad." I do love that they didn't let him off the hook for that. I
No.
was
Yeah.
terrified they were going to do some kind of thing where, oh, actually, it was, any of the other tertiary characters like Jack or Kazi were actually the one who killed Ronan for whatever reason and were able to pin it on someone. But no, they're like, oh no, Clint definitely did it. He was definitely a murderer for, 5-ish years.
Yeah. And I like that the way that he goes into that in this episode where he like dons that outfit again
Hmm.
is him going to the plaque that is honoring the Avengers.
Yeah.
And he's speaking to Natasha and says like I miss you. I wish you were still here.
Yeah.
I wish it was me. Um and for all of those reasons, I'm sorry for what I'm about to do. Like this
Hmm.
is as silly as this show can get. It's these parts that hit the hardest, and like
Hmm.
I loved Black Widow. I think it is a fantastic movie for celebrating a character after a long period of time, but it didn't really do the like honoring of Widow's history so much as like was a celebration of her and a passing of the torch. Um
Yeah, I mean, for me, it seemed very much like here is the reason you'll like Yelena as the new Black Widow.
right. And that's like
Which,
I think that's
yeah.
the movie that we had to get at this period versus
Mhm.
like if they did a Widow movie, 8 years ago or whatever.
Yeah,
Um
that's fair.
where this actually gives her sacrifice a lot more meaning. This actually like
Mhm.
it makes stuff that came before it better that might have been a little lacking uh before we got here, which
Yeah.
if a show
I'm
can
always
do that,
cautious.
it's good.
Yeah. I'm always cautious to say a thing that came out later retroactively now makes this bit better. But I do think that if you look at the overall narrative that they're telling, this now does give you the breathing space to go, oh, this wasn't just
because this is what it means to the people in her life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I did appreciate that a lot. And how does this episode end? Oh, wait, I remember.
So, yeah, this is where we get the payoff to you Daredevil maniacs not shutting up for years.
I will continue. Well, listen, I'm not a madman. I'm not going to continue to tweet "Save Daredevil" because I think technically it is close enough.
It's a little vague.
Acknowledgement.
Yeah, it's a little bit vague on how they're handling this, but we'll get more into that.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is where we do get the reveal after Maya has her confrontation with Ronan, and the reveals that Clint gives her. Maya has a little bit of a suspicious feeling about Kotze, and then Yelena reveals Kingpin via a JPEG in a text message.
When I saw that and I heard they play just perfect, like the needle drops on some of the Christmas music they do here, and they played "You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch." I'm like, the music, I watched it on my lunch break with my wife, and I was like, ah!
We didn't even talk about the music in this show yet. The way that they use Christmas music in this show is outstanding.
Just spectacular.
There's a lot of stuff that, like, I don't know how often I'll revisit much of the shows. Like, I'll probably revisit Loki before season 2. I don't think I need to revisit WandaVision before Multiverse of Madness. But, like, I feel like this is a show where I could actually revisit it for the holidays year after year and make it kind of a tradition, which is cool considering, like, the rest of the shows were very good, but one and done for the most part.
Yeah. I feel like I'd hit the highlights, right? Like, I want the car chase. I want the rooftop fight. I want the macaroni scene.
It hits a lot. It hits a lot of the, like, the Shane Black stuff. Like, and that's why I think it works so well with Iron Man 3 is because he did that movie, but he also
exactly.
Most of his movies are set at Christmas and have a little bit of
such a evocative time of year. It works.
There's a lot of holly jolly mixed in with like the like fun action and what have you. I don't. Did the Predator? I can't remember if the 2018 Predator movie had Christmas stuff or not. I don't recall.
I think it.
Yeah, it does. It does because the main character ships back the helmet, and the kid thinks it's a Christmas present.
That's right.
But I think that's mostly the extent of the Christmas stuff. Or it might not be. That might be Halloween. He might think it's a Halloween mask that he's going to wear. I think that's
Halloween
what it is.
Present.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
still a holiday. Still a holiday.
Yeah, still counts.
But yeah, so now we're going into the final episode, which is the best finale of any of these MCU shows to date. And I'm including What If, because that is now officially like, yes, that is coming into play. It blows every show that they've done this year out of the water for finales.
The moment in WandaVision where she says goodbye to her kids, though, that was
outstanding moment, but not an outstanding episode all around.
That's fair. I'll give you that.
I think the high of that episode is higher than anything else. But everything else,
the rest of the episode, yes, I agree completely. And this episode fires on all cylinders constantly. It does fun stuff. It takes little breaks, and like we get Vinny D, who is like,
and we get him right away. It's the beginning of the episode that he gets reintroduced, like for real.
With his cane and his Hawaiian shirt, which is lifted right from, it's a Spider-Man comic, but whatever.
The cover is he's wearing that exact outfit and a Santa hat.
Yes.
It's so good. But yeah, we get that scene. Eleanor is honestly kind of trying to do the right thing here, where she's trying to break off that business relationship that she has been stuck in, I guess, since Kate's father died, which they never really like. I feel like there should have been more Kate's dad stuff. For all the stuff they set up in this show, they didn't do a very good job of like connecting that tissue to here.
I really felt like something was going to happen with Kate's dad, just because that actor clearly had his beard dyed, which would be something you'd want to do if you wanted to make them look
Age somebody.
younger, because you were going to
Yeah.
bring somebody back. But then just nothing happened, which is fine. I do want to know. So in this scene, Eleanor says, "Hey, look, I quit. And by the way, if you try to come after me, I've got other stuff going on that will implicate you, and just let me walk away."
Right.
And at that point, Vinny D's eyes starts to twitch. Do you feel like he overplayed that? Because for me, it felt like a couple twitches good, but by the end of the scene, he's like,
"This is where we can get into the vagueness of how they're handling this character." I think Vincent D'Onofrio is playing it as the same character he played before. I think the show is just using the same actor.
So I'm inclined to believe, because I know Vincent D'Onofrio has tweeted like, "Hey,
Right.
it's the same guy."
He says he's playing it as if he is dealing with losing the city after the blip.
Right. And obviously, he doesn't have control over that. That's the Disney bigwigs and Feige and everybody else. So how much is it actually connected? Who knows?
Right.
I don't know.
And I think
until they tell me otherwise.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course you would.
Well, no, and I think that's Marvel's position too.
Well, that's the thing, is I think
profitable to do it otherwise. Yeah, sure.
I think they're leaving it as vague as possible.
Yes, agreed.
To say, and not even to pay it off later, but to pick and choose what they want from those Netflix shows.
Yes.
So that they can be like, okay, some of this matters and some of this doesn't, without people getting too up in arms about stuff. So they're like, we're bringing back these actors, and maybe we do another show, maybe we do movies, whatever, but it's not going to be those specific shows. It's going to be our version of stuff. And so I think they have to play that balance a little bit, because it is like with the actual shows themselves, as I know somebody who worked on the social teams for some of those shows. Netflix straight up owns the shows. They don't own the characters. They don't own, what have you, but they own those productions. So I don't think Marvel wants to deal with those sort of ropes that are in the way. Like they don't want to deal with that red tape.
Yeah, reading the business tea leaves. Hey, did you like that Kingpin character or that Daredevil character? Well, if you want to see more, go subscribe to our rival.
Yeah, and Netflix post, like, everybody had Daredevil as like their front page featured thing after this episode. So like it's Netflix is clearly gonna like make some bucks off of it, and Disney would rather them just make
be the ones who make the bucks because they are Disney.
And so it is,
which has paid me off to be a fan of them, obviously.
Right. It's all I just sold off my Disney stock. I'm not afraid to say that. They have not made me very happy on the business side of things. On the content stuff, great.
Very happy.
Like,
there we are.
On the business side, and having just visited the parks again earlier this year, or late last year, not earlier this year. I am displeased with a lot of the things going on. So
I am displeased. Sir. Displeased.
Yes.
I voice my displeasure.
But so like it's also played up in the fight scene that comes later with Kingpin, where he's a little more of a comic book character.
Yeah, he's tanking like arrows to the chest, and he gets exploded.
He does the belly bomb, like he forces Kate away by just going, huh. Yeah. So
I really expect
it's a little bit more of like, this is our version of the character. I like, that's where I think they're gonna just like pull a little bit of a string here and there.
Yeah.
But I think those shows are just kind of like, for the most part, standing on their own now. And then, once in a while, I want Jessica Henwick back. Please.
She's great in everything, but I always feel terrible because everything that she's in seems to not go, like, it's not her fault, but like Iron Fist, Game of Thrones, the new Matrix movie, it's like,
hey, I really
you can't catch a break.
I really like the new Matrix movie.
Oh no, I'm not saying it's bad, or I think it's good, but I'm saying it did not do well financially.
It's also still a pandemic. I think it did.
That's a fair point.
It can't all be No Way Home.
That's can't all be through. Wait, no, I'm not going to get it. I almost did it. I'm not trying to spoil No Way Home.
We already did that episode. Don't worry about it.
Okay, great. Then can't all be 3 Spider-Man.
Yeah,
and it can't.
It's all. I mean, we're sidetracking to the Matrix, but I will say, it was just after No Way Home where everyone broke their rules and went to the movie theater.
I gotta see this in the movie theater because
exactly.
I don't want it spoiled for me on Twitter.
I can't wait 3 months for it. And then the reports started coming out of surges, and it was already available day one on HBO Max. So I think there's a lot of stuff that explains why the Matrix maybe wouldn't have done like gangbusters, but that's the Matrix at work.
Either way, having Henwick back would be lovely. She's great. Having Bernthal back as the Punisher would be spectacular.
Would be fantastic, yeah.
But I agree that I think going forward, whatever they do, even using the same actors, they're going to reference the stuff they don't own as little as possible.
Exactly.
They'll pay lip service to it to keep all of the fans, of which I am one. They'll give us enough so we'll shut up about it. Like, yeah. We brought your actors back.
Not pleased necessarily, but like, just giving somebody mittens on a cold day, just enough that it's like, all right, I appreciate that. That's fine.
Yeah. All right. You know what? You didn't have to do that. You did it, and I'm glad that you did. And I mean, I'm hoping they do more content with both of these characters because, like, Vincent D'Onofrio is tremendous as the Kingpin. Mm-hmm. Kingpin can be a villain on any number of New York City-based heroes. I'd love to see Daredevil show up in Spider-Man and have sort of like not even necessarily a mentor-mentee relationship, like a buddy cop thing.
A dueling, like a competing vigilantes kind of thing.
Yeah. That would be great, you know? And like they both have secret identities now, which really hasn't been a thing
Dude, that is one of my favorite things that is coming out of like this last couple months of Marvel stuff is we're finally getting that aspect of characters. Like, it is.
Which I mean, for the
it's
Avengers,
fine that we didn't have them, but like it means a lot for certain characters, and we just haven't had that. So it's fantastic. Yeah. But yeah, with like the Kingpin stuff, the way that this episode ends, I think a lot of people don't understand that. Like, I think the way that they were setting up Kingpin's physicality in this episode, like the stuff we were just talking about with like the over the top, like belly bomb, like that kind of stuff. Yeah. The way that his body was just like missing after an explosion of like a bunch of different eras. Like
he blew up. It's fine.
They're setting up that like you're not just going to take him down willy nilly. So the way this episode ends with Echo shooting him, he's just going to be blind, which is what happens in the comics.
Off camera.
Exactly.
Off camera shooting him. Come on now.
And like it happens in the comics too, and like almost frame for frame, and he is still alive. He just has bandages over his eyes. So, you know, I think that's where we lean forward, because you're not going to bring Vincent D'Onofrio back in this role to piss people off.
Yeah, one episode and a picture of him in another. It's you're not gonna.
So I think a lot of people who don't understand that business side of the casting, and that like in the comics this is a thing that is actually like there, because I think the MCU for the most part, with the human characters that don't have special abilities and don't have superpowers, they play fairly realistic with injuries. Like at least especially with Hawkeye now, where they did the montage of like, why would you be hard of hearing, and it's just like explosion
all
after
the times
explosion
I got
after
blown
explosion.
Up, mostly.
Yeah.
I think it was the times I got blown up.
Yeah, but
one
like,
of them.
You have like Rhodey does not have the use of his legs anymore. You do like the characters who are just human characters tend to have physical repercussions from stuff. So I think the mind frame of the viewer is, okay, he's dead. He got shot in the face. But it's also like we have to remember it is still comic book world. So there's
I'd
that.
be curious to know how many folks out there watched that and went, "Oh man, she killed him," because I saw that, especially with the pan away. I was like, "Come on, all right, sure, fine."
It's a cliffhanger that I think many people don't understand as a cliffhanger. I think I think people are just, or a lot of people are just under the assumption that that is the end of that character, and then in 2 shows or a movie like down the road, we'll see him again, and people will be psyched because they were wrong about it. So I think, it's actually good for Marvel.
Spider-Man.
Yeah, and it's good for Marvel that way, just because it's like, they can play that naivete of those certain viewers for their benefit to have that hype moment later on. So, but there's other stuff in this episode.
Like we talked about, cool. Like, here's what happened with the Kingpin, but like, there's a whole party.
The
bring back the LARPers.
The party scene. Okay. Doesn't really do a whole lot in the episode besides like Kate kind of confronts her mom a little bit. But it's at the party that we get like Kotzi doing the sniper stuff, which leads to the LARPers being the integrated team that is like as the workers. I do like, because that is like in the comics, they have the people in the building who kind of like come together. And this is just their version of doing that. So I like that they have that. I don't know if it's necessarily done the best way possible, but
here's my thing. Like they've stated these are first responders for the most part. You got a firefighter, a policeman, or 2 police women. I don't remember exactly what the makeup is, but like, and their response to an active shooter is, well, let's put on our medieval costumes.
Yeah, that might be a bad lesson.
Put on the uniform you wear. It's your job. Like, this is your job. Do your job, not your playtime thing.
Yeah, but I do appreciate, though, that they are now hanging out with a superhero, so they're kind of like,
well, we got to have our costumes.
We're part of the superhero team, and we have to look like we're Thor's 3, kind of. Like,
the Warriors 3. You got did dirty, but at the same time, am I that sorry you're gone?
Yeah, Sif. Yes, maybe Sif. I think it was a good character.
She's not necessarily gone. We'll see.
Yeah, we never
coming
see.
Back from Love and Thunder?
I don't think so. I mean, we got her in Loki, but it was like a weird thing.
Yeah,
like there's a plot device to that, but like we don't technically. She is one character we do not see ended. So
listen, until there's a body, they're alive. Kingpin again.
Even if there is a body, sometimes.
Multiverse, you can just do whatever you want.
Gamora. But yeah, the whole, like, this is probably the funnest action sequence in this, where we finally get the payoff to all the trick arrow stuff that they've been teasing the whole time and giving us a little bit of, but like,
I love that Kate labels the arrows.
Yeah,
it's just spectacular.
And I just
Yelena and Kate. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No. Go for it. the
Yelena Kate banter again, where she even does the "Stop making me like you."
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I can't help it. It's so good.
And that's like, honestly, that is kind of their hallway fight scene.
Yes.
That is, granted, they're going through offices, but that is their MCU version of those guys getting the Netflix hallway scene, which is kind of nice.
I love that there was some poor schlub working on Christmas Eve, like, what the?
Yeah.
It's gonna be a quiet time. Trying to get some emails sent before I go on vacation. What's going on?
Oh no, he was not allowed to go on vacation. His boss told him the Saturday before. He's like, sorry.
I'm gonna need you in on Christmas Eve, like in the evening.
And all the office lights are getting turned off for some reason.
So sad.
But yeah, that leading into the ice rink at Rockefeller Center is so good. Like, because this show has been fantastic, and while it takes place in New York, there hasn't been like a lot of that New Yorkness to it.
Yeah.
And that's
like, you had the Brooklyn Bridge in the car chase, or was it Brooklyn? I don't remember.
I don't even remember. One of them. But like, the iconography hasn't really been there so much. Yeah. And that's one of those things where it's like, the majority of the MCU besides Avengers like doesn't really have that much New York in it. Like even Spider-Man is like he's in DC for a lot of it. And then he's in Europe. And so like and then a lot of them are just in space a lot of the time. So it's something that like is so in the DNA of Marvel stuff that hasn't really been there.
Yeah.
At least not a lot. And so for them to do the show and not really have that iconography, I was like, well, at least we have the ice rink thing. We have the Rockefeller Center thing. And it does pay off tremendously well. Like the way that they actually do that, it finally does feel like a big New York story. Which, you know, Marvel needs New York. Like that is the company.
When like 70% of your heroes are based out of there, you gotta kind of, you know. Sometimes.
Granted, these are the movies and TV shows, and that is based out of Los Angeles, but that is
or Atlanta.
Well, I just mean the offices, but
fair enough.
Not the filming so much, but the offices. But like this is a big chunk of this show was filmed directly in New York, and like sell that more, make a reason for that to make sense, because a lot of this show could have just been Atlanta stuff, even the outside stuff. So it does, like the subway scene where they're like waiting for the subway actually feels like New York. That's the stuff that is just missing in a lot of MCU stuff that I'm glad we're starting to get a little bit more of. I'm glad that Spider-Man, like the way that No Way Home ends, he's on his own in New York, so it makes it less likely that he can go other places. Because he's just going to be a broke schlub making his own suit now. So like
he definitely swings by the tree at Rockefeller. So my question
which
is,
I think a lot of people expected a connection there and maybe a cameo.
The timeline.
Yeah. But that's the other thing too, is there's the cross references of, you know, earlier in this season you get the reference to the Statue of Liberty, which you get in the movie, which I think that they played those balances fairly well for the fact that none of this came out in the right order.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I do think that if I have to gripe about anything, it felt like there was an army of tracksuit mafias when previously it looked like there were like 10 guys max, and here it feels like 50 to 100 people in tracksuits are coming for these folks.
I think they were trying to, in the earlier episodes, make standout characters, which for the purpose of like making moments that are memorable, it works, but it kind of hinders the idea that there would be more of them, because it kind of seems like there's maybe 10 of them.
And talking about Callback City, like we set up 3 episodes ago where one of the tracksuit mafias is talking about taking his girlfriend to Imagine Dragons, shows up to be like, hey Kate, you know, I'm only here to say thank you, it worked out, and then he gets his ass kicked. And then later, like, Clint sees an owl in the tree.
Yeah, that is like the
owl
I like
pays off because it.
Yeah, I don't know if I love the owl thing, but
like it was cute, and you know, that was a thing that happened. Like an owl stood away in the tree one year, but I'm just
there's also questions about how this works now, because realistically speaking, shouldn't those 2 guys have like exploded when they got shrunk? Like we've never gotten explanation on Pym stuff being expanded to not having to be contained in a suit.
Okay, I'm gonna give you the answer.
The truck is made out of Pym materials.
No. This is the answer for all of the Ant-Man stuff. All of it. It's very. I want you to lean in real close here.
No, I'm not going to, because I know there's going to be a comedic payoff here.
Hank Pym is only a scientist in name. He only thinks he's a scientist. He's actually a wizard.
Fair enough.
That's it. It's just, why did that Pym particle work? Wizard did it.
Yep.
I don't have to think about it anymore.
That's one of the things that like I will gripe about nitpicking and stuff. But like those are the things that like I don't hold it against shows, but I still go like it still broke the rules a little. I don't care. I still love it, but like
Ant-Man intrinsically breaks its own rules in the first movie. Like when Hank has the tank on his keychain, like by the rules you set up, that tank should weigh as much as a normal tank, but it's just on your keychain. It's Listen, the second pin particles get involved, a wizard did it.
Fair
the
enough.
End.
But yeah,
the fight is great.
With the tracksuit stuff, I think that they maybe should have just done a better job earlier in the show portraying that like they have different hideouts. So there's there's 50 people at this hideout and 50 people at this hideout and 50 people at this hideout. And they probably just needed to do a little bit better job doing that in order to convey why there would be 200 of them at this fight.
That's fair enough.
A bunch of Adidas knockoff wearing Mr. Smiths fighting Neo at the end.
It did feel like that, where they were just pouring in, and like at a certain point, like I realized, like, hey, I got to show up to this, or the Kingpin will have me and my family killed. But like when people get shot with Stark arrows, which I assume like they have to kill at least a handful of these, would you not go like show up and like shoot yourself in the foot and be like, they got me.
Can't show up at work.
Tried. I tried. I really, Kingpin, I gave it hell.
Yeah,
I was there.
Well, that's the other thing too, is like a lot of these were not like less than lethal. Like a lot of
definitely not.
There's
a
one
lot
that
of
just
people died.
There's one that just like chaotically spins needles away from it.
Yeah, like flechettes.
Somebody got that in a throat. Somebody got that in a throat. But yeah, I get why they would have to, in order to show off the trick arrows and pay that off, they just have to have an army of them. Like it is what it is, even though if they didn't set it up. So I'll take
my final
the win instead of
Yeah, that's fair. I give my final two standouts. One is just how happy Jack Duquesne is to use his sword on people. Is like, I've always wanted this, and like how there's that immediate rapport
his
with
at the kind of mentality of like, it's so good,
and his immediate rapport with the LARPers, where it's like, hey, you handle a sword pretty well. Do you want to, maybe hang out sometime? The final,
but it almost seems like he brushes them aside.
Oh, definitely,
like the
way,
but he's like, I don't want to, but I don't want to be an asshole. So I'm going to talk about the blood on my shirt. Or on his tie.
Like I have zero expectation Jack Duquesne shows up to a LARPer thing, but I like that they like that. Like, you like swords so much, we do a whole sword thing. He's like, I'm more about like champagne and caviar
with it.
Yeah. Which just adds to the fact that he's not a good guy necessarily. He's kind of a dick.
No,
I like him for that.
He's a goofy sleazeball, kind of. But
yes, exactly.
But not an important sleazeball. He's just like, well, that's Jack for you.
Yeah, exactly.
I do like. He's one of my favorite characters in the show because of the way that they set up the whole red herring thing of just like, he's a goof. That's what you got.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the final big emotional payoff is the conversation between Hawkeye and Elena, where he he really lays it out of how much he regrets what has happened. And like, on the one hand, we talk about like rule breaking or lore breaking. I don't like to get hung up on it because I feel like it matters more for the story than the overarching meta narrative. But like, when the Avengers were talking about, did Natasha have any family? Hawkeye's like, did she? Like, was he sitting there thinking, well, I know at very least he's got a sister because she taught me the secret whistle that she and her sister share. Should I say something? Oh, wait, the conversation's moved on. It's fine.
Yeah, and I think that because she was already cast as Yelena at that point, so it's like there's no reason for it to not be there if he wanted to be honest about it. But like, I think it's one of those things where Natasha keeps things close to the vest, and so I think too, and I think that is Clint honoring that aspect of Natasha for her, probably not knowing if she would want them to know about that. Like, because at that point, Yelena's on her own, on her own, but like the Countess is with her at that point, narratively speaking. So to Natasha's knowledge, Yelena is out just doing
living
the thing,
her best
doing
assassin
the thing,
life.
well, doing the thing with the widows, like freeing the minds of the widows and stuff that are out in the world. So she is like, she doesn't need attachments from whatever it is in the real world. She has this thing she needs to do. So I think there's plenty of
I mean, I can buy
underlying
you can talk your way
reasons
around it.
I think there's underlying reasons that like you can dig into, but like aren't, on the surface, or could have been done a little bit better. But
totally fair.
I think the characters have enough history to be like, you just believe them.
Yeah,
because you do.
Fair.
Yeah. So, but other than the post-credit scene being the full performance of Rogers the musical,
I was so like, I wanted more than anything that it pans into the audience and you see old Steve sitting there and just being like, just super uncomfortable with everything he's seeing.
Are you going to write a review, Steve? No, I don't think I will.
Oh, I don't think I will.
Yeah, I think a lot of people had a want of a cameo in this scene, because I talked to somebody else about it, who DM'd me like right after the episode was live, who was like, they wanted Yelena in the audience.
I can see that,
but like,
I also would have accepted that would have been in the audience.
Yeah, that would have been probably the best if they did do any of it, just because he could have been like, it's me. Because he's
in there, but this is great, guys.
He's the only one that's not embarrassed about it. He's the only one that's like gung ho about like, yeah, I was there. Wink. So yeah, that actually would have played well. But I think for the most part, that's the first time that I've actually heard that suggestion. Everybody else that I've heard suggested would have been weird, and it just would have been the same joke from the first episode of the season. So
that's a good point. Where it's just, you either needed someone who was really, really into it,
or just the show itself.
Yeah.
But then, so we skipped over the last thing, which is the watch, and the reveal of Mockingbird, the MCU Mockingbird, who has been sitting in the background this whole time.
Which, I mean, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. had a Mockingbird, so I guess that's not canon anymore, or...
Well, that's the thing.
It's not Mockingbird. It's Agent 19. Who is Bobby Morse.
Yeah.
Who is Mockingbird.
Well, that's the thing, is Agent 19, who do you associate that code name
and also,
with, kind of? So it's,
And also, Bobby Morse was married to Hawkeye, so...
Right. So now we get into the thing that I said earlier, which is we can touch on real quick before we finish up, is I think that this works in a way that they could set up future stuff where we do not know Linda Cardellini's maiden name in this.
That's true.
We only know her as a Barton. So she could have a sister named Bobby.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
And she could have taken over the mantle of Mockingbird Agent 19 when that retiring happened. And then you could just have Bobby and Kate be the couple. There's your Mockingbird and Hawkeye couple.
Yeah. I mean, you could
I don't know if Disney goes that hard with it, but like, I think that would be a pretty beneficial way to handle a lot of these things. So, yeah.
I feel like this is what I keep talking about when I talk about, like, this paid off, but did it? Like, cool. Yeah. It, like,
it's just that is just a nod for people in the know. It's not like a payoff. It's just like it's one of those things that you would expect from like an NCIS, like this watch storyline in the background. Yeah. And it's just like, cool, the boss got their retirement gift back from whatever. It's that. Yeah. But like, if you're in the know, it's more important than that. So it's So fan servicey, but also not fan servicey because it's a different character. But you know,
Yeah.
they could also, if they wanted to in time, just say like the name she uses now is witness protection name. Like she doesn't use her real first name. Laura. Linda Cardellini, actress. Laura
That's right.
Barton. Yeah. But yeah, Laura could be a cover.
Yeah. My name is Laura Roberta Morse Barton.
Right. Yeah.
Bobby's my middle name. Sure, why not?
Yeah. The Dark Knight Rises Robin moment.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put that evil on us. Excuse me, everybody.
She found the cave. Yeah, so it's
if it was a Hawkeye cave, it should be called the Quiver, because that's where arrows were at. Anyway.
Or the cage. He would live in the bird cage.
Yeah, no, fair. As Robin. Fair
and Mockingbird.
Mockingbird.
Their farmhouse is the bird cage.
See, now I'm doing the whole Robin Williams, Nathan Lane movie, which is just spectacular.
Expected, yeah. But yeah, I think we've covered a lot at an hour and 30 minutes. This is maybe the longest episode of this show we've ever
You're
done.
welcome. I talked too much.
I talked a lot too. But no, that's the longest episode we ever did was our very first episode, which happened to correlate with when Kevin Feige announced an entire phase of things in 2014. So that will probably never be competed with. I think that was over 2 hours long. Our first episode, that was a mistake.
We've learned a lot since then.
Not an accessible way to get into things. But yeah, I want to say thank you for. Oh well, I guess we can finish out before even that. So what would you say was the top tier episode for you in this series?
Oh god, that's tough because, like, from an action perspective, my favorite one was 3. I loved the car chase is pulled directly from the comic, including all the trick arrows. I absolutely love that scene and the
nod to the car that they actually they use in that comic, but don't use in this intentionally.
Like, no, we're not taking that. What are you doing? Come on.
And it gets smashed anyway.
It does. I love that. I loved the Kingpin reveal in 4 or 5, and I loved the macaroni discussion.
Yep.
In 5, so that's really strong. But the finale was also so good on so many levels. If I have to give it to anything, I'm giving it to 3 because it was contained, it was concise, it didn't at no point was I taken out of that where I was like, where are all these tracksuit guys coming from? Or, hey, there's a lot of like stuff getting set up and we got like 2 hours to wrap this up. Where are you guys going?
Yeah. And that's I think that's actually why I'm caught between 2 episodes as well. I think 3 probably takes it, but like 3 and 5 are probably my 2 favorite of the series.
Yeah.
And then like just barely behind it would be 6. Like there's just like a couple things that like would make it drop behind, but it's still like impossibly good of an episode. Like and it's the best finale they have done for any of these shows. So like even if it's not as good as those 2 episodes, it's still one of the best episodes of all of these shows.
Like, I mean, listen, I liked Falcon the Winter Soldier a lot. I thought it was really cool. I loved the costume design, but almost any one of these episodes is as strong, minus maybe the very first episode, as any episode of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. No disrespect to that team. They did a great job. I think they were working, like they had to rewrite stuff. It's very clear it went weird. Yeah. And I suppose the whole Isaiah Bradley backstory was pretty rad.
That was. Yeah.
I'm not trying to like be like, oh, that sucked comparatively. No. It didn't.
You're just saying good. This is next level comparatively to that.
Not that I loved Caesar less. It is that I love Rome more. Shakespeare? Nothing? We're not doing that? All right, fine.
Well, no,
it's trying to bring a little culture.
It's not about Shakespeare. It's about that monster Caesar. No, I'm just listen, it's 11:20 and we've been at it for an hour and 40 minutes. My brain's fried.
This has been lovely. I really appreciate you having me on. I'm always happy to talk Hawkeye and things like that.
Yeah, and it was a good excuse to just chat, because usually
it's
just
been a hot minute.
It's usually just through like DMs and stuff. So yeah.
Exactly. Or Erika Ishii hugs.
Yes, that's true. That competition. That sounds weird.
It was more kind of like a running gag. She was
in on.
But I feel like
yes,
yeah.
But yeah, we had a competition to see who could run into Erika Ishii the most one SDCC. Yes. I don't remember who won, so it didn't matter. I think
technically you got it last, so probably you.
I maybe got into like an extra party where she was.
That was it. That was probably it.
Yeah, because I was at the party at Flux, and I don't believe you were there.
I snuck into the Future Man party by bribing a doorman. And that's why I ran into her. Which, Future Man is a great show. If you want to talk like some crazy Hulu shit at some point, let's do that. Not now.
I would have to get Hulu. But
yeah. Or you could hoist the black flag. Don't do that. Don't do that.
That's true. Yeah.
Don't do that, kids.
Just like
that's
that
bad.
one Assassin's Creed.
Yeah. Push Up Your Glasses does not endorse the super cool crime of piracy.
Well, neither does Push Your Glasses Up.
Oh, what did I do?
You did the thing that everybody does. Don't worry about it.
Push your glasses up.
Listen, we're gonna
see what I did. Okay,
we're fading fast. I'm gonna end it. But thank you again for coming along. I will put a link to where people can find you on social stuff in the description below. If they want to find your very good cosplays.
Thank you. Am I allowed to do one other plug? Because if I don't,
plug
my
away.
Podcast mates will. I also am on a podcast called Hops and Box Office Flops, where me and a couple of my buddies drink beers and talk about movies that did not do well. We're doing Matrix, I think, tomorrow, but I hope it wasn't tonight because I definitely missed it if so. Anyway.
And now you have a talking point from somebody defending the movie.
I appreciate that.
Bring to that show.
I will.
But yeah, until next time, bye.
See ya.